Genealogy. Marshall, Illinois is a small farming community just across the Wabash River from Terre Haute, Indiana. The rich soil feeds vast fields of corn and acres of soybeans. The biggest landowners in town were the Grabby family. Fred and Charlotte Grabby were very prosperous. Both worked the farm with their daughter, son, and daughter-in-law.
The Grabbys had a lot going for them. I mean, they had substantial resources, inheritance on Charlotte Grabby's part, and well into the six figures. So these were not poor, small dirt farmers.
Fred Grabby was easy to spot. At 6 foot 4 inches tall and close to 300 pounds, he dwarfed his petite wife.
Well, when I first got into the family, I thought Fred was very nice, very polite. He was fun to be around. He really seemed to like me. They worked a lot. Charlotte worked from daylight to dusk.
The Grabby marriage had its ups and downs like all marriages, but this one had some unusual twists. Fred Grabby had an eye for younger women, and shortly after he married Charlotte, the couple divorced. Later, they reconciled and married again. But in 1981, Charlotte again asked for a divorce, and Fred moved out of the main house into a smaller cabin on the farm. The reason for the divorce this time was that Fred was having an affair with the pretty 24-year-old bartender, Vicki McAllister.
Not exactly the most successful person in that part of the world. She attended bar. Her reputation was not of the purest.
On July 24, 1981, Charlotte Grabby left the house to cultivate soybeans on the farm. Her children expected her home by dinner time, but she never returned home. When her children couldn't find her, they contacted the local sheriff. Fred told the sheriff that he had spoken to Charlotte earlier that day near a storage shed on the Grabby's farm, and their conversation got heated.
They got into an argument. He left the machine shed. Charlotte pursued him in her car.
She got in her vehicle, drove off, and was last seen. The last saw her driving up the interstate. That was his story, and consistently over time, that's what he said.
In the shed, authorities found Charlotte's uneaten lunch on her tractor. Her purse was also in the shed, along with her migraine medication and driver's license. And the neighbors said she saw Charlotte's car drive by earlier in the day, but the driver did not appear to be Charlotte.
They saw Fred's pickup go by, and then they saw Charlotte's car right behind it with a blonde, curly-haired woman driving it. Charlotte Grabby has dark, short hair, straight hair.
A few days later, Charlotte Grabby's car was found across the Indiana state line outside a bar in Terre Haute. Police found no blood, no evidence of violence, but they did recover a fully loaded handgun under the seat. Investigators learned that Charlotte had written a letter shortly before she disappeared, and that letter contained a warning. Charlotte Grabby disappeared from this remote field on her Illinois farm. Just prior to her disappearance, she asked her children to make a promise.
If she wasn't home by 4:30 p.m., we were supposed to come and look for her.
The reason? She was afraid of the man she was trying to divorce, Fred Grabby.
My dad would have fits of rage for seemingly no reason at all, directed mainly toward my mother, but sometimes toward my brother or myself, more my brother than me, actually. One particular instance, I heard yelling, so I ran outside. My brother and my dad were fighting physically, and my dad even took my brother by the side of the head and beat his head into the fender of the pickup.
Just 10 days before she disappeared, Charlotte left several notes in a safe deposit box in the local bank. In the notes, Charlotte accused her husband of stealing some farm equipment and said she didn't think she would live through a divorce. She said she was afraid of Fred and also his friend and business associate, Dale Kessler. When police interviewed Dale Kessler, he said he was home on the night Charlotte disappeared and that Fred Grabby had been with him. When a grand jury asked Fred Grabby about his whereabouts on the day Charlotte disappeared, he invoked his Fifth Amendment rights and refused to testify. With no evidence of a crime, the official investigation stalled. Charlotte Grabby became yet another missing person. Despite a $25,000 reward posted by the Grabby children, Charlotte's disappearance remained a mystery for the next 3 years.
It's all I thought about from the time I got up till the time I went to bed every night. How am I going to find my mom? She could be alive out there somewhere. Probably not, but she might be. And I had to go on that possibility, and I kept thinking, you know, if it were me, she would never give up.
With nowhere else to turn, in 1984, Charlotte's daughter hired a private detective, Charles Pearson. Pearson discovered that Fred Grabby had recently broken up with his longtime girlfriend, Vicki McAllister, and Pearson tracked her down in Indiana. Almost from the start, Vicki McAllister seemed anxious to talk about her life with Fred Grabby.
He was able to play on her emotions and to draw from her a horrible secret.
It was the secret to Charlotte Grabby's disappearance, and the story was so horrific, it was difficult to believe. Vicki claimed that she went to the shed to borrow a steel drum from Fred to haul some trash. When they heard Charlotte drive up, Fred told Vicki to hide behind a tractor. Charlotte and Fred immediately began to argue and soon turned violent.
From what Vicki McAllister told us, Fred actually choked Charlotte several times and then would let up on the pressure and let her regain consciousness and then would choke her again, making comments to her the whole time.
Vicki said that after Grabby choked Charlotte to death, he sodomized her. Afterwards, he used a grease gun to fill every orifice of her body to make it more flammable. He then put her body in the trash barrel and headed towards the river. Vicki drove Charlotte's car and abandoned it over the state line in Indiana. Later that night, Fred doused the body in diesel fuel, and while Vicki watched, Fred burned the body. The fire lasted throughout the night. Eventually, only Charlotte's skull remained. Grabby threw it in the Wabash River, saying that it would make good fish food. He then rolled the barrel into the river.
The story, when you hear the whole thing, it's really kind of hard to believe.
McAllister's tale horrified Charlotte's daughter.
It was almost overwhelming. Of course, I cried a lot. And over the course of the next few days, it had to sink in because there just was so much to it, you know, and it was so horrific, as you say. I just kept praying that my mom didn't go through any pain.
McAllister had plenty of motive to tell a story that would put Fred Grabby in prison.
There's no greater wrath than that of a spurned woman. She may have originally been concerned with long-term relationship with him. It lasted for a certain period of time, and then it ended. And then I think she was angry.
Vicky came to expect, if not be told, that she would share in the dynasty, the financial dynasty of the Grabby family, that she would become a part of everything, and that she and Fred would live happily ever after. I mean, that's the story that guys tell girls, and girls often believe.
In exchange for her testimony, Vicky McAllister was offered total immunity, relocation, and a new identity. And if Grabby was convicted, McAllister could claim a $25,000 reward offered by the Grabby children.
Well, anytime you have just one person's word against another, it's always better to have some type of physical evidence.
But there was another living witness to the events of that terrible night 3 years earlier. And that evidence would tell if Vicky McAllister's story actually had the ring of truth. Fred Grabby's ex-girlfriend, Vicky McAllister, took police to the scene of the cremation, which she says took place on the banks of the Wabash River, just underneath this mature maple tree. But after 3 years, there were no remains found anywhere in the vicinity.
I was with one of the attorney generals that was assisting our state's attorney in the prosecution of the case. And I made a comment to him, just wondering if at this burn site, if there was any possibility that petroleum products from the diesel fuel that was used could still be recovered in the soil around this site.
Since the Wabash River frequently overflows in the area of the maple tree, any traces of the diesel fuel in the soil would have long been washed away.
We took some soil samples and they were negative for petroleum products.
But one piece of potential evidence survived: the maple tree under which the funeral pyre allegedly burned.
Trees make excellent history books because they show us when events occurred nearby the tree. They can explain to us exactly when different events happened.
In this photo, Sheriff Crumrin is standing on the spot the barrel was allegedly placed. Was there any way for science to corroborate Vicky McAllister's story? In the spring and summer, roots transport water and nutrients from the surrounding soil up through the trunk and into a tree's branches, where they fuel the growth of very large cells. When the tree goes dormant in late summer and fall, it produces smaller, more dense cells. This cycle produces the familiar rings we see when we cut a tree branch or trunk. Each ring indicates another year has passed. If the tree absorbed diesel fuel from the gruesome funeral pyre, was there any way to tell?
Diesel fuel is a toxic material to trees. It will either kill the cells or it will affect their growth rate, their metabolism adversely. When it's absorbed by the tree, it will slow the growth rate of the cells that it's in contact with.
Investigators cut 5 branches from the tree, and when they counted back through the growth rings, they saw something startling.
In 1981, the growth of those branches had dramatically slowed from what it had been in previous years.
Growth rings from the year Charlotte disappeared were much thinner than earlier rings, but there was no way of knowing why this was so. To find out, pieces of each branch were ground into sawdust and given to Dr. Donald Dickerson, an organic chemist. Dickerson dissolved the samples and injected the sample into a gas chromatograph. The results indicated the presence of hydrocarbons, compounds indicative of petroleum products. Even more startling, Only 2 of the 5 branches showed traces of petroleum, the ones on the side of the tree where Vicki McAllister said the cremation took place.
Samples on the other side of the tree were negative for hydrocarbons.
Some species of trees will translocate or carry the material laterally around the tree better than others. Maple trees in general tend to maintain fairly direct columns between the roots and the branches above.
A unique forensic approach had uncovered evidence that matched Vicki McAllister's bizarre and horrifying story exactly.
Heck of a coincidence.
John O'Brien spent 40 years as a crime reporter for the Chicago Tribune.
In the boondocks of Marshall, Illinois, way down in Clark County, I don't think there's another crime that comes close to not only the murder of Charlotte Grabbe and the means in which her body was disposed of.
But the story doesn't end here. Another mysterious fire, an attempted prison breakout, and the murder of one of the Grabbe children were all to impact Fred Grabbe's trial. When scientists discovered hydrocarbons in the maple tree next to where Charlotte Grabbe's body was allegedly incinerated, Fred Grabbe was arrested and charged with murder. The star witness was Fred Grabbe's ex-girlfriend, Vicki McAllister, who was given immunity to testify. Her story both fascinated and horrified courtroom spectators.
The first time I think I heard about the tree was when it came out in court. And I thought, wow, you know, that really, to me, proves Vicki was telling the truth about everything.
The motive? Money. Fred Grabbe had no desire to split the family assets with his wife, even though it was Charlotte's inheritance which comprised the bulk of their holdings.
Most of the farm ground that they had, it's my understanding, belonged to her through her side of the family. And Fred was going to lose a lot of money, basically. That's what it all amounted to.
If the love of money is the root of all evil, the roots of a maple tree soaking up errant diesel fuel sealed Fred Grabbe's fate. Fred Grabbe was convicted of first-degree murder in the death of his wife and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In a bizarre twist to a bizarre story, Fred Grabbe's new girlfriend, Barbara Graham, armed with a gun, arrived at the jail one night and attempted to get him out of prison. She fired 5 shots, wounding one deputy in the leg.
He is able to get up on top of her, says, "Don't make me kill you." And at that time, the struggle ceased.
For that offense, Barbara Graham was sentenced to 16 years in prison. 2 months later, the home Fred and Charlotte shared and the house their children, Jeff and Cindy, had built next door burned to the ground. Arson investigators discovered both fires were deliberately set.
Oh, I believe Fred Grabbe probably had some involvement with it, not in setting the fires directly, but I believe he probably had some involvement. But we'll never know, probably.
Fred Grabbe's lawyers appealed the first verdict and, on a technicality, won a new trial. A month before the second trial, Fred's son, Jeff Grabbe, who had testified against his father at the first trial, was found murdered in California with 3 bullet wounds to the chest.
We were notified by Seal Beach, California authorities that they had found the body of Jeff Grabbe floating in one of the harbors out there.
To this day, some believe Fred Grabbe had a hand in his son's murder, although Fred denies it.
I don't know if he had that kind of pull with people he could send out to California. I don't think so, but there's a lot of things I don't know.
The second trial ended the same way as the first. Fred Grabbe was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 75 years in prison.
I wrote him a letter telling him that I forgave him for what he did. I hate what he did, but I still love him because he's my dad, if that makes sense.
No one has ever been charged with Jeff Grabby's murder, and no trace of Charlotte Grabby's remains have ever been recovered. Vicki McAllister claimed her reward, then left the area, relocated at the state's expense. She continues to fear that Fred Grabby will somehow take revenge, even from behind prison bars. The maple tree still grows not far from the Wabash River.
The maple tree, alive and growing, was one thing, one creation that Fred Grabby could not intimidate, could not reach, could not destroy.
Bill, and prove it to yourself. We really do have great service and low prices.
When a Texas car dealer was found shot to death in his bed, it looked, at first, like suicide. But a closer examination of the evidence convinced investigators the man had been murdered in cold blood. A decade would pass, and a family would be ripped apart before a jury rendered final judgment on what really happened that hot Texas night.
Where it was.
Paramedics and investigators found Bill Mowbray with blankets pulled up to his neck. He looked as if he were sleeping, except for the massive damage caused by the .357 Magnum that lay near his body.
The entrance wound was on the right side, the right temple, and the exit wound was on the left temple. Now, this was a very high-energy weapon. It was a very, very disruptive blast. It literally blew this victim's head apart.
The fatal wound was a contact wound. The gun barrel had been placed directly against Bill Mowbray's head. As the bullet exited his left temple, it went through his left hand, which was apparently resting under his head when the shot was fired.
This was either a homicide or a suicide. Either he shot himself with his right hand and had his left hand bracing his head. You know, that was a plausible theory at that point. Or somebody else shot him while he was lying or perhaps sleeping on his left hand.
Brownsville residents were shocked to learn that one of their most high-profile residents had apparently killed himself. Bill Mowbray ran a local Cadillac dealership and was well known in town. But the dealership had fallen on hard times. Bill was deeply in debt and was being investigated for alleged tax fraud.
He was fairly desperate. He had gone to a banker and put his head down on the desk and cried in front of that banker and said, if you don't loan me $200,000 to help me out, I'm going to kill myself. And he was desperate. He had gone to every source he knew for funds.
It looked as if Bill Mowbray had gone through with his threat. But investigators weren't so sure. They noticed something unusual in the position of his body. Something that said it was physically impossible for him to have shot himself. They were convinced that Bill Mowbray's death was not suicide, it was murder. At 39, Susie Mowbray was attractive, personable, and an asset to her husband Bill's business.
Bill Mowbray Motors, where you can buy your all-American classic.
The two, both coming off divorces, had met 9 years earlier and married soon afterward. They lived the good life, a beautiful home, exotic vacations, condos at the beach. For Bill Mowbray, money was no object.
My brother did have a tendency to spend a lot of money. He did like good things. When he would get involved in any kind of a hobby, he would get involved completely.
But Bill was having serious money problems. He was overextended on his business and in trouble with the IRS. He was also cheating on his wife.
People knew they were separating. Bill was going out with someone else, and Susie had found out about it too. She found a couple of glasses of champagne in the bed when she had come back and questioned the maid about it, and the maid had confirmed that Bill was going out with someone.
On the day before his death, Susie discovered that Bill had made changes to their insurance policies. She found that within days, the current policies would be canceled, and Bill's daughter would become the main beneficiary of new policies worth almost $2 million. For police, this signaled a possible motive for murder.
We got the 2-year suicide policies in Texas. If you buy an insurance policy, you have to wait 2 years before you commit suicide. If you just buy it and commit suicide, of course, it doesn't pay off. And if the new insurance policy, well, to begin with, she wasn't going to receive any money, so she had to make a move, and she had to make it quick.
Susie's actions just after Bill's death also aroused suspicions. Bill's brother Jim went to the house just hours after Bill's body had been removed.
I'd been told that he had killed himself in his bedroom, which was up a set of stairs. And as I got closer and closer, I started hearing music and people laughing and stuff up in the bedroom. And I was taken by that, and about that moment, Susie popped out in front of me. And my first words to her were, "What's going on?" And she said, "We're having a painting party." And I was dumbfounded.
Like having a party at this point is rather inappropriate considering the
Everything had been taken out of the room. All the furniture, even the carpet, was gone. But for police, the unusual position of Bill Mowbray's body provided clear indications of foul play. When a high-powered gun is fired at close range into someone's head, it creates what is called blowback. Basically, the force of the blast blows brain and blood matter back onto the hand and arm of the shooter. Bill Mowbray would have had to shoot himself with his right hand, since his left hand clearly contained an exit wound. But his right hand was lying at his side and was virtually free of blood.
There was a very minimal amount of blood smeared about the right arm and hand, but no spatter. To me, this indicated that it was extremely unlikely that he could have been holding the gun when the shot was fired. At that point, then, I reached the conclusion that this individual could not have shot himself.
In addition, his right hand was under the covers. It seemed impossible that he could have fired a bullet into his head and then pulled the covers back over himself all the way up to his neck. What's more, blood analyst Sergeant Dusty Heskew said he found blood spatter and traces of lead on the nightgown Susie Mowbray was wearing when Bill died. All indications were that Bill Mowbray had not killed himself. And there was only one other person in the house the night of his death, his wife, Susie. And she had a $1.8 million motive to kill him. Prosecutor Bill Hagan theorizes that Susie could have laid next to Bill, and using the pillows and blankets as a barrier between them, fired at point-blank range into his head. He says that despite the barrier, blowback left blood spatter and lead vapors on her gown. These red dots show where Heskew claimed to have found blood. 4 months after Bill's death, Susie Mowbray went on trial.
You feel confident going into your trial now?
No. I don't think anyone in their right mind would say, I feel confident going into a trial like this. No. I'm scared.
After a 3-week trial, Susie Mowbray was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The jury agreeing that it was physically impossible for Bill Mowbray to have shot himself. But as she was sent away, her supporters said they found evidence that she was innocent. The question was whether they would ever get a chance to prove it. In June of 1988, Susie Mowbray was sent to prison to serve a life sentence for the murder of her husband, Bill. She maintained her innocence while attempting to adjust to life behind bars.
I can remember there was this moment of utter just terror after they had announced the verdict, and this female officer of some sort is escorting me over to the county jail. And first words out of my mouth, are they going to hurt me? And she said, not unless you give them a reason.
Her supporters, particularly Wade Burnett, her 20-year-old son from a previous marriage, went back to the evidence that was used to convict her, claiming crucial details were misrepresented. He found that prosecutors had not disclosed a report that contradicted their own case. It had been done by Herbert McDonnell, a highly regarded blood spatter expert. He had examined the gown Susie Mowbray was wearing when she allegedly shot her husband.
The evidence I examined strongly suggested that that garment wasn't anywhere near Bill Mowbray when he was shot. And of course, that would assist the defense and not the prosecution.
McDonnell was never called to testify. Instead, the prosecution's other blood analyst, Sergeant Dusty Heskew, testified that he found 48 separate blood spatters on Susie Mowbray's gown. This was a particularly damning piece of evidence. He said he used luminol to examine the gown. Luminol is a chemical that causes blood to glow or luminesce even after it has been cleaned. The effect only lasts for about 30 seconds. Time, Heskew said, to measure all the blood spatters. This is a claim dismissed by most blood spatter experts.
I don't doubt that he saw specks of glowing material in the dark, but according to his testimony, he saw many and he measured them. This is like measuring the length of a firefly at night in the springtime. That's a good trick. I wish I knew how to do that. I don't.
There were other problems. Blood is not the only substance that will glow when in contact with luminol. Certain bleaches, even something like horseradish, will also glow. No one doubts that Heskew saw something glowing on Susie Mowbray's nightgown, but no tests were ever performed to determine if what he saw was in fact blood.
The forensic evidence in the original trial pointed a particular way, and it turned out that all their testing and their forensics were all flawed and probably carelessly done. Everything was so directed towards a finding of guilt that I really feel like it wasn't a fair analysis of the forensic evidence.
When it was discovered that the nightgown had not been properly tested, the judge overturned the verdict, and after serving 9 years, Susie Mowbray was released from jail.
I am standing here with my family, not inside a prison. This is freedom.
But she would have to face a new trial, and prosecutors remained confident that the evidence used to convict her the first time would convict her once again.
She put a gun to Bill's head and she pulled the trigger, and she did it because her marriage was going bad, and she saw an opportunity to continue living the lifestyle she had and collecting some money.
But her defense attorney said it was clear Bill Mowbray killed himself, and that key evidence proving their case was gone. The T-shirt Bill was wearing when he was shot had been torn apart by paramedics trying to save him, and the blanket next to his body, which would have absorbed large amounts of blood spatter, had been lost shortly after his death. Susie Mowbray's retrial in January of 1998 was perhaps the biggest media event in the area's history. People lined up for hours to get a seat in court. Thousands more watched nationwide on Court TV. Finally, it appeared the courts would answer a question now almost a decade old. Had Bill Mowbray killed himself, or was he the victim of a cold-blooded killer? The main bone of contention in the retrial of Susie Mowbray centered on a simple issue. Bill Mowbray had been shot with a high-powered gun at point-blank range. Whoever shot him would have been spattered with blood. Yet, Bill Mowbray's right hand, the only hand he could have used to shoot himself, had no gunshot residue and was virtually free of blood. That left Susie Mowbray as the only other suspect. But a respected blood spatter expert, originally hired by the prosecution, said there was no blood on the gown she was wearing when her husband was shot.
I could see no staining whatsoever on it, but neither inside or outside. So I told him at the time, I said, I don't see how she could have been in close proximity to the exploding head, literally. Bill Mowbray had a lot of tissue, brain substance, dura, hair, skin that was blown all over the room.
Prosecutors claimed it was possible that Susie could have placed pillows and a blanket between herself and Bill, and that these received most of the blowback blood spatter. But that blanket and the T-shirt Bill Mowbray was wearing when he was shot had been lost, a serious blow to the prosecution. Meanwhile, Susie Mowbray's defense team had its own problems. They had to account for what many considered to be her unusual behavior just before and after the shooting. She found out just before Bill's death that she was being cut out of his life insurance policies. Then, after he was shot, she called a family friend before calling 911. And within 10 hours of his death, she was painting the room where the shooting took place.
They were so fixed on the impropriety of the way she was acting and the way, the times and the flow of traffic through her house and how she dealt with people, and then the assertion that she was sitting there drinking a drink when in fact it was probably water. We had to get around the fact that she acted inappropriately.
Her defense also concentrated on Bill Mowbray's behavior. His business was in trouble. He was being investigated for alleged tax irregularities. 10 years earlier, he had actually attempted suicide. And he told friends he would kill himself before spending 1 day in jail. He even told a coworker what funeral home he wanted to handle his body.
The IRS was about to close in on him, and he had no place to turn. And because of whatever it was about his personality and the way it evolved, the only way out for him was to kill himself.
After 2 weeks, Susie Mowbray's second trial was nearing the end. As the prosecutor made his closing argument, the courtroom sat riveted. And then there was a shocking development.
Smoking her cigarette, when she's standing outside with her drink in her hand, when she's medicating herself, he is still alive, gaggling in his own blood.
Your time is up, counsel. Thank you. Remove her, please.
She makes this outburst, which is totally unexpected, although some think it was choreographed, but it was totally unexpected. She makes this outcry, and really what it does for us is gives us a relief that, look, we've done everything we can. We have got her to the edge, and now if something goes bad, I'm just going to look back and say, it was Susie's fault.
The outburst was as close as Susie Mowbray would come to testifying in her own defense. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with its verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Freda S. Mowbray, also known as Susie Mowbray, not guilty. Signed, Edward.
In a highly unusual move, the jury foreman read a prepared statement shortly after the verdict.
Furthermore, members of this jury have reached the conclusion that the only issue decided by this jury is that the prosecution was unable to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the guilt of the defendant.
Jury members later said they couldn't speak to Susie's guilt or innocence, only that the prosecution had not proved its case. Despite, or perhaps because of that decision, the case continues to generate controversy.
I can't be absolutely sure in a mathematical sense that she is the one who did it, but I am sure that he did not shoot himself.
There was a physical impossibility for her to have killed her husband.
Susie Mowbray did not receive the insurance money. She is considering writing a book.
I want my children to be proud of me. I've been given a new lease on life, so to speak. I want it to be good. I want it to matter.